One of the most interesting topics in digital media space right now is programmatic curation. And today we're going to get into it with one of the real experts, Simon Halstead. Simon has worked in digital media for 25 years and has the distinction of having worked at all the original internet portals, Yahoo, AOL, Microsoft, including their various rebranded amalgamations, which is where I met Simon. He is currently the founder of Halstead Incubation Partners, a strategic advisory business supporting companies in their go-to-market strategy and their market launches. Right now, I'm in California and the sun is streaming in. He is in the UK, where it is a little bit darker and later in the day. Simon, thank you for taking the time to talk to me today.
Great to speak to you again, James, and I'm very jealous of that yellow orb in the sky that appears to be projecting stuff at you. We haven't seen it for a while in the UK at the moment.
Excellent. Hey, Simon, before we get into the latest trends, let's just talk about the current state of programmatic. You and I have been in the space a really long time. And at the beginning, programmatic was a dirty word. It was associated with remnant inventory. It might have been called class 2. Many publishers were very hesitant to use it. Now we're in a world where the vast majority of inventory is transacted programmatically. Is that a good thing, or did we lose something along the way?
Yeah, look, I'm one of the original programmatic guys. I was one of the early programmatic people in Europe, and I'm always going to say it's a good thing because lots of it's been good. But let's not underestimate by some of the complexity it's actually added in. It hasn't solved all of the problems I think it hoped to. And I think we're all seeing a little bit of things starting to maybe even come full circle. So moving from that, targeting one-to-one and targeting anyone wherever they were, where you could find them, back to much more constrained and structured deals. And that will talk into some of the curation topics we're going to touch on today. There's been a load of things that have disrupted the market. So just from programmatic and demand-side platforms buying into exchanges initially, through things like header bidding, so where multiple SSPs were servicing the same opportunity with multiple paths to bid and expanding addressable supply and competing in the ad server, but also increasing some duplication and complexity in the market. Things like that drove SPO. So they've driven the need to optimize how you buy your supply and to think about sustainability of how you buy, of which bids I listen to or how do I manage multiple hops. And that's before we get to identity. I lived through GDPR rolling out. I used to have hair before that. I mean, I didn't, but it would have taken hair if I still had it. And those things around addressability have added complexity. So those are some of the challenges. But on the positive side, we're seeing new mediums, new markets come in, maybe learn a little bit from that experience as well. So CTVs come in much more on a private marketplace-led approach than that full open auction opportunity. Digital out of home's taken a lot of learnings about how to get the benefits of scaled demand, but still maintain some of the control on a more limited private basis. I think there's a couple of maxims that apply. Just because you can work with everyone doesn't mean you should. You should be really selective about who you partner with and how and why, be that on the demand or on the publisher side. And most importantly, it's still a people-first business. The experience of being a consultant over the last 18 months is about relationships. It's about being able to drive and have those conversations, really understand what people's need. So technology helps us, programmatic helps us, but adds confusion. And I think for publishers, it's added some complexity as well.
Can we come back to a second for SPO, the term you used for supply path optimization? A lot of people are saying that's still one of the biggest challenges that needs to be solved in our space. And I think you touched on it, but the idea is simply that there are too many intermediaries and there is too much waste, so that of the dollar that an advertiser is trying to spend, only a fraction makes its way to the publisher. I have taken the other side of that argument and said, you know, I was at a digital media drinks a couple of weeks ago, and we were saying if we were sitting in that pub and wanted a pizza, we could call up DoorDash and get a pizza delivered to us. And a lot of the fees are going to go to the driver, to all of the associated costs with getting the pizza. but in doing that, we're clear that we're getting some clear value. And to me, DoorDash and other things are a real world example of the value added services that intermediaries along the value chain, whether they're verification, DSPs, SSPs, all of the ecosystem. And so clearly what we might call intermediaries have a role. But as you think about it, is the goal just to be a little bit more efficient, or how should we think about supply path optimization?
So again, I think there are a couple of things in there. One of the things I think Programmatic did is a lot of those costs existed before. They were just hidden, right? So you paid the ticket price, and the cost of optimizing was done by a client service team in-house, right? That account management team existed on the publisher side. Now publishers don't have the same scale of team. They've moved to a different intermediary in the space. So there's a little bit of almost exposure of some of the costs that existed. The cost of data is another great example where data is being layered on at a different point now with a slightly different goal, but the cost of creating that data was already in the previous price structure. That said, I think there are some challenges where lots of people are trying to take quite sizable percentages through the pipe. So I think supply path optimization is really about, and it has a couple of variants, but it's about a couple of things. One is about, if I have the options for buying this inventory for the same impression, and it's being surfaced to me 4 ways, which path do I choose? And do I choose it because of the relationship the publisher has with that SSP and DSP? Do I pass it because it has more data on one opportunity or not? Is it enhanced in some way? So it's understanding how you want your supply paths to look. If you're concerned about sustainability, you may want the most direct path. You may not want those bids to be duplicated. If you just want to get the cheapest price, you may want to bid wherever you can and try and drive price down within an auction using that multiple opportunity. But for most people, I think it is about understanding where they buy, being clear about the path they buy from, and header bidding to a degree proliferated many exchanges. So a little bit back to my first point is you can still work with 10, 15 exchanges on a campaign. You probably don't need to work. You probably don't need to work with 30. Are they really being additive at that point? If you go from a publisher yield side, is adding another exchange actually genuinely revenue additive? And particularly something that loses sight a little bit is if it adds latency or even adds vendors into a TCF file, is it additive enough for the UX and consumer damage? Because we sometimes lose sight of the consumer as well. So supply path optimization is really about what's the most efficient way to find the supply you need with the criteria you need, and that can be price driven, it can be quality driven. But I think from a publisher perspective, publishers always want to drive yield. It's a tough business being a publisher, and so they are always managing that incrementality in that space as well.
I want to come up on something you just said about it's okay to work with 15 different exchanges, because I think I would argue you don't need 15. Then you get the vast majority of the value from the first 3 or 4. And yes, it might be easy to sort of add another exchange, but then that's another relationship that you need to monitor or manage. How much value do you think you get from going from, let's say, the first 3 or 4 exchanges to 15, and then for you the cutoff seems to be 30 is too many?
No, I mean, so first of all, I think it's really it's specific for different publishers, and it's very specific for different buyers. So it is that's why supply path optimization is an individual brand or publisher choice. How many partners do I want to list for? You know, if you're a premium publisher that is in everyone's allow list that everyone wants to buy from, yeah, 2 to 3 is almost certainly sufficient, right? If you're a less well-known publisher and just want to attract demand from multiple sources, that pool is bigger. It's funny, your first question was, have we lost something? Sometimes I think we've lost a little bit of sight of planning, and we're relying too much on machines to do the work. I was a terrible digital buyer many years ago, last century actually. But you know, you would plan where you wanted to buy. You wouldn't literally put in a system and let an algorithm make every decision, because you couldn't. But even then, there's a basis of what is my allow list? What is that group of publishers I want to work with? And that's almost coming back to curation. Like, where is the where's the pool I really want to focus and play and extract value from?
Yeah. Yeah, and I realize that it sounds like I'm coming out on the side of saying supply path optimization is not that big a deal, and it's actually not what I'm saying. I think it is a huge issue, and I think part of it is on both sides, the publisher side and the demand side, putting more visibility into these transactions to actually understand. And you and I have seen examples where advertisers or agencies could be actually bidding against themselves, providing price support. And this is perhaps less of an issue now where that most have moved to first price auctions, but certainly when we're still in second price auctions, advertisers were providing their own price support because they weren't aware that they were the only buyer on some impressions. So yeah, clearly it's an issue, and I think a lot of it can be solved through better visibility. I promised we'd get to creation, and so let's get there now. How do you define curation? Why are people so excited about it? And what reasons are there that people might be skeptical or concerned?
So it's a difficult one because there isn't a standard definition of curation, and in fact, in the last week, I've seen it used in 2-3 different cases. It's a little bit of a classic industry. We love a hot topic and a hot take and an active discussion about the value. And so I often think about curation as it's being talked, curation in the wider sense that it's being talked about right now. It's almost a topic header, which actually has lots of smaller elements in it. Some of it is a response to signal loss, right? With cookie deprecation, with the decreased amount of addressable cookies that are out there, with concerns about what data be passed with GDPR. The information that supports each impression is less valuable, it's harder to decision against. So curation really falls into a couple of brackets for me. One is where publishers are able to enrich supply with data they know that they may not want to pass in a bid stream. Okay, they may want to add some of their first-party data or even just their own insight and value in cross-site travels to help identify an audience for a buyer. But they don't want to put that in the bid stream. They want to keep that value themselves. The other is just creation of a pool of supply, almost to that allow list point. It's finding the groups of supply that perform well for your campaign and brand type, and really indexing into those, and potentially even being prepared to pay more or take opportunities out of the auction or higher up the auction, pay a greater price for a better point of access. There then is just curation done at the sort of system-wide level on some fairly standard signals. I think that bit's a little bit less interesting. I think that's a little bit the muckier side of it. And then you can also focus your curation really with that supply path optimization and sustainability focus about efficient path to market. What do I want to buy? What's the most efficient way? So curation can then be seen, this is a really long answer, I'm sorry, James. Curation can also then be seen as a service. It's a service that's enhancing value and delivered via PMPs. We've seen Xandr, Index launch, and to a degree, Magnite and Programmatic as well, all launch versions of their own curation tools. There are other SSPs with curation tools, I should add, which allow buyers to create some of that insight that's not available in the bid stream and run across the platform. We've also seen standalone companies in this space do well. Big news, obviously, in the last week with Experian leveraging curation by buying Audigen and other aspects to that deal as well. So it could be something that's delivered via PMPs, via existing DSPs and pipework. Can also be something that's delivered via managed service. It's something where someone is able to create that value from signals that are out there. And again, all the way back to the start of our conversation, Programmatic was going to get rid of every ad network out there and all managed service. Well, that has not happened, right? Managed service is still a really valuable route where people either have greater insight or operational knowledge than you and can deliver real value. So it's a really interesting space because it's all of those things. I don't think it needs to be over-defined, but I do think the principle behind it is good. Is the underlying principles are strong identification of what you want to need and then making those things work well for you, having a more direct relationship with publishers, having more insight and information being passed, and actually creating a better value exchange than just relying on just a buy-side algorithm, often which historically have either indexed it to some price elements as their driver or indexed it to some very specific data points and now you're enriching with other additional data points. So I have one really strong view in this area. Curation should be something done in partnership with a publisher. It should be about either unlocking publisher value that isn't available in the bid stream, or it's something where you're getting access to more premium supply. It shouldn't be just rebadging of open auction inventory with one simple signal. It's really much more involved conversation. I think that's where the opportunity will come.
So given what you just said and the fact that there's activity around this, there's announcements, there's mergers and acquisitions, clearly it's a hot topic. And as you said, I think it's in response to some of the privacy challenges and signal loss. Are you optimistic that it's going to become both more standard and be effective in dealing with that standard loss? Do you see this as something that we're going to be talking about in a couple of years of, okay, glad that happened, the industry's in a better place? Or is this going to be in the category of some of the things that we've talked about that sort of come and go and never really become a long-term part of the ecosystem?
So I think it's important, and I think it will be part of the conversation. That said, I think it's a really hot topic right now, maybe not even for the right reasons. I think it's just, we love a hot take and we love a hot topic and we love to rip some things apart. If we really strip it back, it's a really simple activity, right? It's making certain that you're buying into the right areas, and as a seller, you're selling the right audiences the right way to the right people. It's really 101 stuff to a degree, but it's making it work, and it's dealing with some of the inefficiencies that actually do exist in programmatic ecosystems. So I think it will be a big thing. I actually hope it will be a big thing that's talked about less. And that would be real success, like the benefits of curation being done more widely, with some standardization. Noticeable that I just saw today or yesterday that I think Tech Lab are talking about redefining seller-defined audiences to be curated audiences. I think that's useful. Anthony Katzer put up a great piece a couple of weeks ago about a lot of the stuff that does exist to help people curate inventory well or buy better is already there. So I think it's going to evolve and standardize, but I actually, at the same time, almost hope the conversation quietens down a little. People just get on with the actual work of doing it, because there's real value there. I was talking to a couple of curators recently, multi-local, a local UK original company, and they've had real success, right? They deliver real value for their clients. Their clients are really happy. Their clients on the publisher side and the demand side are happy. So that feels like something that's working and got legs, and there's real opportunities to go on. And obviously, I think it's a real vote of confidence when someone like Experian make a big buy like Audigen, right? That's a commitment that there is value to be found in this space. So there's definitely a thing. It's definitely not just a buzzword bingo. There's a little bit of buzzword bingo right now, though.
I guess I'd be reticent to walk away from this conversation without pushing you a bit on what type of curation is going to be most effective. Because one way of viewing this is it's just another version of sort of audience targeting from the publisher side using a different methodology. If you think about the types of audiences that could be curated, there's sort of what I'd call traditional, almost behavioral targeting type audiences. There's demographic audiences. You could create audiences around propensity to be a likely clicker. As you think about the signals that the publishers have at their disposal, and you say, you know, this should be absolutely done with the publisher's input, what are the types of signals that you think are going to lead to the most effective curated audiences?
So I think you actually highlighted, I think you used two. There's two examples of high propensity clickers versus a behavioral audience. I think they're distinct values, and also there's third category of them combined. I think all of them have legs and value. For me, I do think it's going to come about where the real value of curation is where you can, across multi-publishers, tie in additional data points. So you're able to take really deeper understood behavioral audiences than people want to share in a bid stream on each individual publisher, and then curate those across publishers to give you a decent targetable pool. That's where I think you start to really get to the value where, you know, targeting, if you apply that targeting just on the buy side, it's often quite self-selective just because of addressability issues. in where it can find those impressions. If you allow every impression that could fit those criteria to be surfaced and remove some of that targeting on the demand side, then I think you'll see real success there. The one I also think will have real legs is people looking for, to a degree, margin efficiency, right? Where people want to really drive through prices of effective working media, and maybe, you know, move past some of the take rates that exist in the market as well. I think trying to make certain that publishers understand where money is being taken is important, and trying to make certain that the fees on it are efficient for everybody is an area of development for the next couple of years as well. I think it's an area that could get quite aggressive and competitive, and I think that's good for publishers.
One thing I was just thinking about as you were talking is publishers have signals that they haven't really used a lot recently because it has moved to the demand side. I'm wondering if some of them will move back. And I'll give you an example. I don't know if you were at AOL at the time, but ad.com had a lot of information around, is this person early in a session? Essentially, is it like the first impression they see or the second impression that they see? Right now, most demand side can see those kinds of signals and they use them in their buying algorithms. If the premise is curation is a response to some of those signals going away, do you see more of that intelligence moving back to the publisher side to get sophisticated in how they think about things like is a user early in a session?
Yeah, and actually I think publishers often also choose not to pass that information broadly into the bid stream, right? So with good reason. And I think it's an opportunity for them to extract some of the value from understanding that. That's why it's not just contextual or behavioral, right? It's other behavioral elements. It's time of day. It's, you know, a really good example someone once said to me is, what's the difference in someone who comes in and looks at news, then sport, then travel, versus someone who comes in and looks at travel, news, and goes back to travel? Those are two different consumers with two very different modes of behavior. But if you just target it contextually, you might not get them in the right mode, in the right frame. So that's where publishers are able to layer more value into it. And particularly where publishers don't necessarily have their own direct sales effort or scale, they can then work with curation partners, be that either at the SSP or even their agency partners, to create these audiences at enough scale that they have real value. So I think it should help address that. I'm occasionally too optimistic and algorithmic. You know, I genuinely believe that RTB was going to lead to some good democratization as well. Sometimes human behavior gets a little bit in the way, and we all try and find a cheat around the corner. But those are good cases where I think it will come to the fore. But look, the other thing is this is why we shouldn't build it up to be this massive thing. This is just part of a campaign tactic. This is just part of our audience identification, right? It applies equally as it to CTV as it does to online to display and video. It's how do you find those audiences in the way that wants, and creation might just be about outcomes, right? It might be not necessarily getting to a CPA, but it might be getting to cost per completed view. It might be knowing that the metric that matters. There's a different debate there about when we get driven by metrics versus actual value for the advertiser, but there are lots of different points of creation. What won't work is if it becomes ubiquitous and it just becomes literally just another deal ID that is curated, because that's not really doing it. They'll become, you know, they'll just become pumped out and it will just lead to confusion. So I think it's a more nuanced conversation. I think that's where real value can be had.
Okay, thank you. Other than curation, what are you most excited about in the programmatic world right now?
So I'm gonna start with, I'm excited about lots of things. We were saying just before we started, I'm actually, the last few years have been pretty tough with COVID, with the economic circumstance, with even the M&A market has been pretty tough, right? And feels to me like there's a new burst of excitement coming towards programmatic. There's lots of other new exciting areas like AI. We're not going to say AI right now, but I think there's going to be a lot of reinvention in the programmatic space. There's potentially things with the DOJ trials and some of the competition authorities looking at some of the large players. I think there's going to be some big disruption over the next 2-3 years, none bigger than the demise of cookies as they have been, even though they're already in very sharp decline. I think that's going to create opportunities for innovation. That's great. I think it also may get us away from the concept and focus on real one-to-one targeting and back to better measurement of success and better focus on cohorts and audiences and delivering versus literally being able to retarget someone based on an action. So those things all come together to drive. There is huge amounts of work to be done on measurement. It's the biggest thing that everyone, I think, needs to lean into. And also for the open web, some standardization to allow us to compete better, more evenly with the large players. That will help in the CTV space as well. But I think it's just an exciting time, James. I really do. I think lots of interesting companies out there, lots of bright ideas, lots of emergence. Things like CTV that have been through rapid explanation are probably hitting a little bit of maturity, where they're now going to go through a cleanup and reinvention phase. And that's a good thing too, because that kicks you on to the next stage of growth. But as I say, if the last, from COVID onwards, I think it's been a really tough time. This last 6 months has felt more interesting. And I think the next 18 months is going to be really exciting for the whole industry.
I 100% agree with you. It's been some dark days in sort of digital media and digital advertising. And as you and I discussed before we started, I think that the last few months have had a different feel, more optimistic feel about them. And so I think we're in agreement there.
Yeah.
Simon, thank you so much for taking the time. What's the best way for people to find you or get hold of you online or social? What do you prefer?
So you can find me on LinkedIn, Simon Halstead. I think it's literally linkedin.com/Simon Halstead. You can find me I am on X as Simon Fester. I am also on Blue Sky as Simon.Halstead Blue Sky. And there is a website with Halstead Incubation Partners, so you can always reach me via that. But or just Simon H at hitbiz.co.uk.
Brilliant.
You'll know someone who knows me is the answer. You'll find a way to get hold of me.
We all will. Hey, thank you again and have a good rest of your day, Simon.
See you later, James. Have a good day.
Will do.